As soon as you start looking at operational technology, OT environments with a security mindset, you realize that many of the most important assets are not the flashy ones like controllers or operator workstations, but the quiet infrastructure that connects everything together. Rooms, cabinets, and cabling shape what is physically possible in a facility, and physical possibility is often the first layer of cyber possibility. If someone can reach a wiring closet, open a cabinet, or tap into a cable path, they can often bypass digital defenses by getting close to the underlying network and control infrastructure. Beginners sometimes think of physical infrastructure as a facilities problem, but in OT it is directly tied to segmentation, monitoring, and integrity. A well-designed network boundary can be undermined by a single exposed port in an unsecured cabinet. A carefully planned monitoring strategy can be defeated if someone can unplug a sensor or swap a cable. This lesson is about understanding the practical security significance of rooms, cabinets, and cabling, and about learning why intermediate distribution frames, IDFs, and main distribution frames, MDFs, deserve special attention when you want to reduce exposure without disrupting operations. Before we continue, a quick note. This audio course is a companion to our course companion books. The first book is about the exam and provides detailed information on how to pass it best. The second book is a Kindle-only ebook that contains 1,000 flashcards that can be used on your mobile device or Kindle. Check them both out at cyber.author.me in the Bare Metal Study Guide series. It helps to start with what IDFs and MDFs are in plain terms, because the acronyms can sound like jargon until you connect them to real spaces. An IDF is typically a wiring closet or distribution point that serves a particular area of a building, connecting local network drops and devices back to the broader network. An MDF is typically a main wiring room that serves as a central point where building or site connections converge, often connecting to external circuits, core switches, and central network services. In many facilities, the MDF is the heart of network connectivity, and the IDFs are the branches that distribute that connectivity to where people and machines actually operate. From an OT perspective, these spaces often contain switches, patch panels, power supplies, and sometimes security and monitoring equipment. They may also contain labeling and documentation that reveals network structure, which can be sensitive information. Beginners should recognize that if an attacker can access an MDF or an IDF, they may be able to connect a device, move a cable, disable a segment, or observe traffic, and any of those actions can create operational disruption or provide a foothold for deeper compromise. These closets and rooms are therefore not just closets. They are control points for the digital and operational nervous system. The first goal of securing rooms and cabinets is to control physical access in a way that matches the criticality of what is inside, because these spaces can be high-leverage points. If someone can plug into an open port in an IDF that serves an OT segment, they might gain network presence that bypasses the usual entry controls like remote access gateways or corporate network authentication. If someone can access the MDF, they may be able to influence multiple segments at once, creating a large blast radius. For beginners, it is helpful to think of these spaces as physical equivalents of privileged accounts. They grant powerful capability, so they must be protected by strong controls. That protection often includes locked doors, monitored access, and strict rules about who can enter and when. It also includes limiting the number of keys or access credentials that can open cabinets and ensuring that access is logged. In a security incident, the ability to know who entered a wiring closet can be as valuable as knowing who logged into a server. Physical access records can narrow investigations and reduce uncertainty, which supports faster and safer response. Cabinets deserve special attention because they are often distributed throughout facilities and can be easier to neglect than centralized rooms. A cabinet might be in a hallway, a production area, or a utility space, and it may contain network ports, power distribution, or even small control components. Beginners sometimes assume that because cabinets are inside the facility, they are inherently secure, but many facilities have many people moving through internal spaces, including contractors, cleaning staff, and visitors. An unlocked cabinet in an internal hallway can become an easy target for tampering, whether intentional or accidental. Cabinets also often have exposed patch cords and accessible ports, which can make it easy to insert a device that listens or bridges networks. Securing cabinets, therefore, involves both physical locking and thoughtful internal organization, such as reducing unused ports, securing patch panels, and ensuring that critical connections are not easily disturbed. It also means using tamper-evident seals or other mechanisms that make unauthorized access visible, because visibility changes behavior and supports investigation. The goal is not to make maintenance impossible, but to ensure maintenance is deliberate and documented. Cabling is an often overlooked part of security because it feels like passive infrastructure, but cabling determines who can physically tap into communications and where failures can occur. In OT, cabling paths can run through ceilings, conduits, trenches, and shared utility spaces, and those paths may cross areas with different access control levels. If cables carrying sensitive operational traffic run through publicly accessible or lightly controlled areas, the exposure increases. Beginners might assume that tapping a cable is too advanced for most attackers, but the key risk is not only sophisticated interception, it is also disruption. A cable can be cut, unplugged, or moved, and that can cause outages that affect safety and reliability. Cabling can also be mispatched accidentally, which can create unintended connectivity between segments that were meant to be separate. That is an important beginner lesson. Physical infrastructure errors can create cyber exposure even without a malicious actor. Securing cabling is therefore partly about protecting paths from unauthorized access and partly about making cabling management disciplined so mistakes are less likely. When cabling is messy and undocumented, troubleshooting and security both suffer. Exposure reduction in this context means reducing the number of easy opportunities for someone to influence the network and control environment through physical infrastructure. One straightforward exposure reduction concept is to reduce exposed ports and unused connections, because open ports are invitations. If a switch in an IDF has many active and unused ports, a person with brief access can connect a device without anyone noticing. That risk can be reduced by ensuring unused ports are disabled or otherwise controlled, and by making port usage visible and documented. Another exposure reduction concept is to separate cabling and cabinets for different zones, so that a cabinet serving office networks is not the same cabinet serving OT networks, and so that a person who has access to one area does not automatically gain access to the other. This aligns physical compartmentalization with logical segmentation, which makes both more effective. Beginners should understand that segmentation is weakened when physical infrastructure is mixed indiscriminately, because physical mixing creates opportunities to bridge networks unintentionally. Exposure reduction is often about avoiding those mixed choke points and ensuring that physical layouts support the intended security boundaries. Securing these spaces also supports observability and auditability, because physical security controls can preserve the integrity of monitoring and logging systems. If a monitoring sensor relies on a network tap or a mirrored switch port in a cabinet, then unauthorized physical access can disable that sensor, which blinds defenders. If an attacker can access patch panels, they might reroute traffic to avoid monitored paths, creating stealth. Beginners should see that physical security and monitoring are intertwined. Monitoring provides detection, but physical access can undermine monitoring. That is why secure rooms and cabinets are sometimes treated as part of the security monitoring architecture, not just part of facilities management. It also means that when physical access does occur for legitimate reasons, there should be a process that includes verifying that monitoring paths are still intact afterward. For example, if maintenance work requires moving patch cords, the post-work check should include confirming that the expected network flows and sensor feeds are still present. This is not about distrust. It is about ensuring that the evidence system remains reliable. In OT, losing reliable evidence can force conservative operational decisions like shutdowns because teams cannot prove what is happening. A beginner misconception is that securing rooms and cabinets is mainly about preventing bad guys from breaking in, when the more common day-to-day value is preventing mistakes and reducing accidental disruption. People working under time pressure can easily unplug the wrong cable or mispatch a connection, especially in cramped cabinets with poor labeling. If cabinets are locked and access is controlled, fewer unplanned hands touch critical infrastructure. If labeling is clear, standardized, and kept current, troubleshooting becomes faster and safer, and the chance of accidental cross-connection decreases. If cable paths are managed and documented, outages become easier to diagnose, and emergency changes are less likely to create new security exposures. In other words, physical security improvements often improve reliability as much as they improve security. This is an important lesson for OT because security initiatives that also improve reliability tend to gain stronger support from operations teams. When teams see physical infrastructure controls as enabling safe operation, not as bureaucratic barriers, adoption becomes smoother. Beginners should recognize that good security often looks like good discipline rather than dramatic technology. Securing cabling and cabinets also requires thinking about life cycle and drift, because physical infrastructure changes over time as equipment is added, removed, and relocated. An IDF that was tidy and well-controlled on day one can become messy over years if changes are made without documentation or if temporary workarounds become permanent. Drift increases exposure because it creates unknown connections and unreviewed access points. A practical resilience and security approach is to treat these spaces as assets that require periodic validation, meaning someone checks that locks function, that access lists are current, that labels match reality, and that cabinet contents align with documented network design. Beginners might think of validation as an audit chore, but it is actually a way to prevent surprises. Surprises in physical infrastructure often show up during incidents, when you most need reliable control and visibility. If a critical cable path is unknown, recovery slows. If a cabinet contains undocumented connections, isolation decisions become risky. Validation reduces those unknowns and makes the environment more defensible under stress. There is also an important interplay between physical access control and emergency response, because OT facilities must be prepared for situations where rapid access is needed. If a fire, flood, or safety event occurs, responders may need to reach certain rooms quickly, and locks and access systems must support that reality. Beginners should understand that secure design includes safe emergency access procedures that do not create permanent bypasses. For example, if a master key exists, its use should be controlled and logged, and its distribution should be tightly limited. If an emergency override exists for a door, it should be monitored and tested so it works when needed but does not become a routine shortcut. This balance matters because emergencies create pressure, and pressure creates the temptation to prop doors open or share keys. Those shortcuts can persist after the emergency, expanding exposure long-term. A resilient physical security design anticipates these human realities and includes procedures that maintain both safety and security. The goal is to enable swift response without turning the facility into an open environment afterward. When you pull these ideas together, securing rooms, cabinets, and cabling is a practical form of exposure reduction that supports OT security at a foundational level. IDFs and MDFs concentrate connectivity and therefore concentrate risk, making them high leverage points that deserve strong access control and clear logging. Cabinets distributed throughout facilities can become easy entry points if they are left unlocked or unmanaged, so they require consistent protection and disciplined organization. Cabling paths can be tampered with or accidentally mismanaged, so they require thoughtful routing, protection, and documentation. All of these controls support segmentation, monitoring integrity, and reliable incident investigation because they keep the physical layer aligned with the logical design. For beginners, the most important takeaway is that physical infrastructure is not separate from cybersecurity and OT. It is the foundation that makes many digital controls meaningful. When physical infrastructure is secure, predictable, and well-managed, the environment becomes easier to trust and easier to defend. When it is exposed and chaotic, even strong digital security can be undermined by a single unlocked cabinet and a few minutes of access.
Thanks for listening. For more audio courses, daily newsletters, and more, please visit baremetalcyber.com.